So what happens to our brain when we stay offline for 30 days? Does anything really happen? Is it even worth the trouble? Hello, health champions, welcome back. Today we are going to answer one of the most common questions related to our digital well-being program, which is, what if I stop using social media for 30 days? What will happen to my brain? Let's find out together. We're going to cover 6 key points. We were going to start by looking at some interesting data about how much time people spend on social media. Then we will see how social media affects your brain and what it does to your brain. After that, we will look at a few studies that were conducted about digital detox and what happened to people after only a week of no social media. And then we will talk about what it feels like to stay away from social media for 30 days. And finally, we will learn how to use social media in a healthy way. Here are some brief facts about how much time people spend on social media. People in North America spend about 2 hours per day on social media. In South America, that number goes up to 3 hours and 30 minutes. People in Africa also spend about 3 hours per day on social media. In Europe, that number is lower at 1 hour and 15 minutes per day. And in Asia, people spend approximately 2 hours per day on social media. The worldwide average is about 2 hours and 25 minutes per day. So basically, we spend about 1 hour more on social media today than we did just 8 years ago. And that's a lot of time. The question is, why do we spend so much time on social media? To answer that question, we're going to look at 3 blocks of information. Block 1. How does social media affect your brain? Block 2. What do companies do to capture your attention? Block 3. How does it change your brain? Let's start with block 1. How does social media affect your brain? Social media works through a simple dopamine mechanism. You post something or comment on something, and you get likes and notifications. These likes and notifications are unpredictable rewards. This pattern activates the reward center in your brain, which releases dopamine. This dopamine makes you feel good, makes you feel satisfied. And when you feel good, you tend to repeat that behavior. This is exactly how slot machines work. They use intermittent reinforcement. This means that you don't always win, but sometimes you do. And when you win, you get a big payout. This intermittent reinforcement makes the slot machine much more exciting and fun to play, and it causes an almost hypnotic state where you cannot stop playing. Because of this effect, now let's move on to block number 2. What do companies do to capture your attention? The answer is quite simple. They make your attention their product, but they do that through a science called attention engineering. Attention engineers study behavior, neuroscience, and patterns of addiction. They develop algorithms that maximize your attention, and then they study how those algorithms perform in practice. As you might expect, the results of these tests are used to improve the algorithms. Once the algorithm has your attention, you lose control over what happens next. You become a passive consumer of content. You go into an involuntary use mode. At this point, your brain becomes the product because the company sells your brain's attention to advertisers. Moving on to block 3. How does it change your brain? When you are under the influence of social media, many parts of your brain get affected. The most affected area is the front part of your brain, specifically the prefrontal cortex. This part of the brain is responsible for attention, decision-making, planning, reasoning, and emotional regulation. It is the part of the brain that allows us to interact with the world in a very complex way. The human brain evolved to interact with a very complex world full of movement, sound, sight, touch, context, etc. All of these interactions generate a lot of connections between neurons in our brain. These connections form neural networks that help us perform complex tasks. For example, when we want to concentrate, our brain uses these networks to filter out distractions and focus on the task at hand. The problem is that screens don't offer all of these ways to interact. They offer a very limited input. For example, a video offers movement and some sound, but it lacks all the context of real life. This lack of context generates incomplete circuits in the brain, so the neurons don't get the exercise they need to stay sharp. If we are constantly bombarded with entertainment, our brain will adapt to this new reality. That means that parts of our brain that are not used regularly will start to shut down. This process is known as neuroplasticity. other words, the brain adapts to its environment. If we don't use certain parts of our brain, those parts will become weaker. This leads to a less focused brain and a less creative brain. Some of the behaviors that you might observe as a result of this process are anxiety, a need for constant stimulation, and a difficulty concentrating. Let us now take a look at a few studies that were conducted on people who took a break from social media. Here are the main findings of those studies. After just 7 days without social media, participants reported improved mood, restored attention and focus, stronger cognitive skills, and increased productivity. They also reported increased self-esteem and general well-being. An interesting finding was that people began to notice more free time on their hands, which they filled with meaningful activities. In other words, taking a break from social media created a ripple effect that had a positive impact on multiple areas of life. Now let's talk about what it feels like to stay away from social media for 30 days. Here's a list of the main benefits that you can expect. You'll have an improved mood. You'll be more attentive and focused. Your cognitive skills will be strengthened. You'll be more productive, and you'll have a greater sense of well-being. Finally, let's discuss how to use social media healthily. Social media itself is not bad. It is simply a tool. The first thing you should ask yourself before logging into social media is, why am I here? Does it add value to my life? If the answer is yes, then it's probably a good idea to continue using it. But if the answer is no, then it might be time to take a break. Some practical strategies you can use to use social media in a healthy way are: 1. Limit the amount of time you spend on it every day. 2. Avoid passive consumption of content. 3. Use it for learning, networking, or productivity. And 4. Turn idle moments, such as those in the bathroom or while waiting in line, into micro-learning moments. Let's conclude with a summary of everything we've learned today. Social media is a powerful tool that can be very addictive. When you use it, you exchange your attention for entertainment, but you can take control back by taking a break. Try it for 30 days. Observe what happens to your brain, your mood, your productivity. Become aware and own the technology. Don't let the technology own you. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, share it with your friends, and follow the channel. See you in the next video.